For much of this programme, we've been pursuing the counterintuitive line, trying to find good where most people see bad. And attacking the banalities of office speak is, to be honest, a pretty easy game. So is it possible to find examples of where business, as opposed to cheapening our language, as Joe firmly suggests, has actually improved it? We found a website for bean counters called theofficelife.com, which contains pages and pages of jargon, much of which is really quite good. Take these two expressions, which seem particularly appropriate in these economically doom-laden times.
Cubicle vultures. People who hang around sacked co-workers waiting to gather up their leftover office supplies. Chainsaw consultant. Someone brought in to do the dirty work at firing time.
And if you want to know about tassel loafers, hippos, lombards and carpool tunnel syndrome, then this is the place to find out. And we followed that up by finding Martin Shovel, one half of a Brighton-based company called Creativity Works.
Right, well, we work with individuals and groups in all kinds of organisations who want to get a message out into the world and make sure that it doesn't get lost in the noise and commotion.
So far, so good. Except Martin was initially reluctant to come on the programme and say outright that corporate speak was great. His job, you see, involves working with senior managers to improve the language they use. And if they heard Martin saying everything was perfect, then he'd be out of a job. But he was prepared to stick his neck out and make one very important claim.
Business jargon at its best is like the sort of distant cousin of what we would generally recognise as the kind of best kind of image-rich language that you'd find in poetry, literature or great oratory.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because
absolutely.
we've heard the view expressed on this programme that the language of business is irredeemably awful and in fact can be blamed for some of the worst things that are going on in everyday language.
Well, I think what I would start out by saying is you can't bunch all business jargon, language, gobbledygook together. I think you have to make a kind of simple number of distinctions. I don't know if you'd like me to...
Yes, please.
...to suggest them. In the irredeemably bad, I would put the use of Latinate words. Long, difficult to understand, obscure, and also very abstract.
Can you give us an example of one of those, please?
This is one that is actually a spoof, but I think you'd recognise it. Undue multiplicity of personnel assigned either concurrently or consecutively to a single function involves deterioration of quality in the resultant product as compared with the product of the labour of an exact sufficiency of personnel. Have you got any idea what that means?
Too many
Absolutely.
cooks spoil the broth.
Too many cooks spoil the broth. Good, clear, concrete Anglo-Saxon.
And that's not an example specifically of business language, but do you see the same process going on in business where people take relatively simple ideas or instructions and give them this veneer, if you like, of sophistication through making the words overcomplicated?
Well, absolutely. I think it's a really sad attempt by particularly lower in the organisation, middle management maybe, to impress. The criterion of a successful metaphor that I would encourage anyone to use is, does it create a clear picture in my mind's eye? And if it doesn't, you challenge it.
Quite a bit of business language just seems to be trying to inject a bit of fun into daily business life. I mean, there are some good ones, aren't there? Al desco is any meal that's eaten at your desk, basically,
Yes,
isn't it?
yeah.
Well, I just think that's witty and it's fun.
I think it's witty and it works.
Can I throw a couple of others at you that I've been given on a list here? Bottom fishing, buying stocks or shares with very low value.
Not the most elegant, and I think that kind of metaphor would probably be dependent on the knowledge of a specialist group.
Eat the frog, have you come across that?
I haven't come across that. Unless it's a French restaurant.
No, well, I don't, yes, exactly. In business in France, it might mean something different, but apparently it means just get on with it, I suppose, in the sense of do the unpalatable thing.
It works.
I mean, the graphic ones have punch, don't they?
Exactly. A good metaphor, as well as creating an experience and making you feel the meaning of something, is also very, very memorable.
But business language comes in for quite a lot of ridicule, doesn't it? And I think sometimes it's the woolliness of it that people are laughing at. I mean, blue sky thinking, for example. It's got the Anglo-Saxon words, but it doesn't really seem to take us anywhere.
No, I agree with you. And again, if it's not actually throwing light on the situation, in other words, if If it's making you puzzle further, then it's not working.
But to sum this up, you do think then that there is a greater degree of richness in business language than most people would assume?
Well, I suppose what I would say is some of these phrases that we're talking about, when they were first coined, they represent a seed of potential creativity. And if we encourage people to create and respond in the moment and produce their own metaphors, I think that would be an enriching experience for the workplace.
Martin Shovel. One final thought. The father of modern management theory was a man called Peter Drucker. In his 1954 book on the practice of management, he defined the purpose of business as being to create a customer, to which he later added, and get paid. It's rather beautiful in its simplicity, don't you think?
Word of Mouth was presented by Chris Ledgard. It was produced in Bristol by Miles Ward and is based on an original idea by Frank Delaney.